Welcome. Good evening, everybody. Thirsty Thursday number 29, coming up on 30 of them. Wow, it's that's quite an impressive feat, guys. Um, Tonight we reached out to try and get some special guests, and they had other commitments that they were entitled or engaged in. So just the three of us can be talking shop, sitting around the kitchen table in our own little space. So kind of going over whatever we want to chat about and whatever we want to do. So cheers, gentlemen. It's good to see you guys. So I think one of the first things, maybe kind of kick this off and kind of see where it takes us. Bobby and I were both at the that Route 90 bridge crash where the child was ejected over into the bay. Had a gentleman jump off the bridge to rescue her. There's a total of, was it 8 patients, Bobby, that were transported? Yep. And there like 5 or 6 cars that were involved. So
yes.
You were the shift commander that day for the division. So you want to, I guess, kind of give us like a little lead in? I've got some pictures up that we can share as we're kind of going through this too, if you want. But
yeah, sure. So it was on a Sunday, and I was acting battalion chief for Ocean City, and we got dispatched for a motor vehicle accident on our Route 90 bridge. So our Route 90 bridge is basically a 2-lane bridge that spans our bay, coming into town, midtown for us. One of the problems we have is we have some serious accidents on there from time to time. And one of the issues is that there's no access. So basically, there's a couple of long spans, and this is the first span outside of Ocean City where this occurred. And so you have trouble kind of getting people in and out, and then it stops all the traffic, and you got to get traffic routed around. So before I got there, an engine showed up, a medic unit, and an assistant chief. The assistant chief ended up assuming command. So I really just helped out with the triage and treatment and trying to get ambulances coordinated on the bridge while the bridge is all closed off. The one pickup truck was precariously sitting on a rail, so we had to use a rescue and use the winch to kind of keep that from going over the edge. That same pickup truck's where a small 2-year-old was ejected, went into the bay. And it's probably everyone's heard about. There was a good Samaritan that was also involved in the accident himself, that saw what was going on and jumped off of I don't know, it was 20, 25 feet, maybe even higher than that, but off of a bridge in about 4 feet of water. And he actually knows the area. He's a big boater in the area, so he actually knew how dangerous it was and did it anyways. And got hold of the infant and cleared the infant's airway. The infant started breathing, or I guess child, I could say, cleared the child's airway, and the child began to breathe again. And that was actually the most critical of all the patients we had. And fortunately, everybody went home. So it was a big, dramatic looking wreck, but luckily nobody was injured real bad and nobody was killed. And that was basically my part of it, was just helping triage everybody out and trying to control figure out which hospitals they would go to. And that's, pretty much it. So we didn't have anybody trapped in any of the vehicles. The vehicle up on the guardrail, actually, they were able to self-extricate with the exception of the one that was ejected into the bay themselves. And so we didn't have a big entrapment problem. So that's basically what I saw. Everybody worked well together. The police really cleared the bridge really quickly for us. All the guys in the on the fire side, the volunteer crew, everybody worked together to take care of things, and it went pretty well. Considering everything going on. So, Ben, what was your perspective of it?
Yeah, so I was assigned at Station 4 that day, and listening to it, obviously you hear the first report, or you hear the dispatch, and hang on a second, we'll get a better picture of the actual incident. that first picture from Campos Media, I believe he's a volunteer member of the Ocean City Fire Department, and does a lot of like photography and that kind of stuff. Gets a lot of really great pictures on the Ocean City area. So that was it. Yeah. But just to kind of give you an idea of what Bobby was talking about with, being isolated on this longer span of a bridge. And currently my internet is moving at the speed of crawl. So we were at Station 4 here, the initial dispatch, and then you hear the assistant chief come on scene, advising that it was a Worcester County Fire Marshal, goes on scene, advises you got a bridge, or the truck is teetering on the wall. So that's when they upgraded the assignment from an MVC with injuries to the rescue box. And I apologize. Like I'm being distracted. I need like some ADD meds. Maybe help me tune into one spot or another. So we're sitting at Station 4. We're the next closest medic unit, and at some point we're like, well, if they're not going to call for more medic units, we're just coming. Like we're going to go. And I think shortly after we marked up to say we were responding, I guess Bobby started calling for additional medic units. And then we arrived on scene. Bobby came over and said, hey, like you guys sent me to go check on a patient, which I actually never made it to. Sorry, boss. You pointed in a direction. I saw a person. I went and talked to them. It actually happened to be the daughter of the gentleman that jumped over the bridge. And when she first said that, it was like, I go up and, ma'am, are you the driver of this vehicle? She says, no, I'm 13. I said, well, who's driving this vehicle? She says, my dad. Well, where's your dad? He jumped off the bridge. He did what? Like, it took me a second. I was like, oh, he jumped off the bridge. Gotcha. Obviously very shaken up, very scared. Ended up putting her in Bobby's command vehicle. And then my other two partners had found a priority patient. And we ended up grabbing that patient and transporting to kind of clear out the area as best we could for more additional medic units. So that was really kind of our thing. Like we were there briefly. I wish I could say I did more, but I didn't.
Well, Ben, let me, if you don't mind, let me chime in. Yeah, I'm all the way down here in South Florida, and when that incident occurred, I mean, and Ocean City is not a stranger to being in the national news. I mean, you will have those occasional calls or high-profile events that occur just because of our location and how populated we are, especially for a good part of the season. And my guys know where I'm from, and I brag about you all the time. They probably get tired of hearing me talk about you guys, but at the same time, I started to get these pictures. I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. And the guys started asking me because they could see a little bit of the pictures that was on social media and what was in the background. I said, we've run a lot of calls, a lot of interesting calls on that stretch of road, in the years that I was there as well. And I see it's a lot of dynamic incidents out there. I've run a lot of boating accidents. I've run a lot of things on the bridge, off the bridge, underneath the bridge, involved with the bridge. And I remember sending some of our guys, one of my crews overboard when we had an incident that wasn't similar, but it was MVC with somebody went over the rail. But to me, what's amazing, and thank goodness that that Good Samaritan knew the waters, and I know those waters exceptionally well. And just you could be 6 inches from a really snotty piece of debris, even though it's very shallow water on that side of the bridge, and with the currents and the tides and everything else. But there's some really, really nasty debris down there. And for that guy, fortunately knowing the waterway, but to take that risk that he knew, it's one thing to jump overboard and say, hey, I had no idea what I was getting into and get lucky. This guy knew, and so I got to give him a lot of props. But Also, just the amount of pride I have from being able to work with people like Ben, you, and Bobby. And I didn't know Bobby was even in charge of the scene until later. But just knowing how that incident was going to be handled, because there's a lot of experience base there, and we kind of run those crazy calls quite a bit. And I'll talk a little later on. A few weeks back, I had a call on my first due that was very reminiscent of some of the crap we run at Ocean City a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, I thought I retired from this stuff. But it's just very, very proud of you guys for what you're able to do with the resources you have. And you're truly isolated. I mean, you're a city of, especially in 4 months, for better than 4 months out of the year, second largest city in the state with between 250,000 million people of population, and you run a lot of crazy calls with very, I would say, lean resources. I mean, we're fortunate in Ocean City to have a lot of things, the heavy rescues and some of the resources, but at the same time, we are an island, and it's not like you have a mile down the road a big mutual aid contingent coming in with a lot of specialized resources. So, kudos to you guys, and especially that Good Samaritan who took that literal leap of faith and did the right thing. Because I actually saw some of the footage from the water of a boater who was coming up on the scene and captured some of the Good Samaritan plucking that toddler out of the water. So I know sometimes back home you guys call that Tuesday, but job well done. So kudos all the way around, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that if he didn't jump, the kid doesn't survive. So he's kind of the epitome of firefighting in general. You take that risk for that specific gain of saving a life, and that's exactly what he did. In seconds, in moments, he literally had no time really to think about it. As he told us the story, he had no time to think about it. It kind of happened, and initially he thought the kid was okay. The kid was on his back, and when the kid rolled over, he realized the kid was in dire straits, and he just did it. So, I hope that all of us will step up for that moment when it comes to do the same thing. That's what we all train for, and that's what we get ready for. But here's a guy with no training. It's he did what we would dream to do in our positions as firefighters.
Well, Bobby, let me ask you this, because of course, some of the details are scant when they get removed. Was the kid in a car seat, get ejected with the car seat intact? I don't know all the details, so I was just kind of curious how the kid wound up from inside the passenger compartment into the bay.
I don't know. They're still doing the investigation of how it happened. What I do know is that when the Good Samaritan looked down, he saw the car seat floating, and then he saw the child appear a distance away from the car seat. So the first thing he saw was the car seat. Then he saw the child away from the car seat. So from the time he saw him, the car seat was out of the vehicle, and the child wasn't attached to the car seat.
Wow, and that's got to be pretty scary on its own, because you can go through the whole Rolodex of possibilities of how that came to be, but just to have somebody who was that quickly thinking, and again knowing the risks and that body of water and the debris and the I got to say, guys, got my complete respect for doing that, but definitely, like you said, Bobby. If it weren't for that rapid action, then it would have been a completely different outcome. And that guy's got the spirit of fire rescue in his blood, man, no doubt. And did he have any background, any military, fire, police, anything?
I don't think so. I don't think he did. He works at our local hospital. I do know that, and and actually, Dipsky, I did. I said we'll give you an application if you went in the fire department. You're a perfect guy for us, but he currently declined. but we said he's still part of our fire department forever. For kind of what he did.
Okay. Well, it goes to show that obviously he has more intelligence than the rest of us, despite his actions. But I was actually going to ask the same question Hickman just put up there, because I know the weather's been ups and downs, but typically this time of year, the water temperature in the Asswoman Bay and Sinnapuxon Bay up there are not too balmy. So what was we had the risk of hypothermia too with that kid.
Yeah, he said.
I mean, it's multiple things. What do you think the rough water temperature was, Bob?
Maybe the upper 50s. He said that when he hit the water, he didn't realize it was cold until he looked how far away a boat was to come help out, and then he realized it was cold. And so where he ended up was about chest deep for him, and he's a pretty tall guy, and he tried to hold the kid out of the water as much as he possibly could to try to keep that from happening to the kid, and the boat came along. But yeah, he said it was cold. So the interesting thing from a command perspective was it was such a dynamic scene. So when I was on my way there, all we knew was that there were two people in the water. I assumed they were both ejected. It wasn't until later on in the incident that I found out that he had jumped in. So I just assumed that two people were ejected in the water. But it was a Good Samaritan boat, so we literally had no contact with them. Kudos to the medic unit to pick them up, because the medic unit was sent to the boat ramp because we knew the boat was going into the boat ramp. They had no idea it was coming, and blam, someone threw a kid at them. So they literally knew nothing about what was going on, and we didn't know anything. And unfortunately, the Good Samaritan's daughter, who was pretty distraught, I thought she was actually really, really injured because she was so distraught about what was going on, understandably. We couldn't give her any information. So it wasn't like a Coast Guard boat or a natural resources boat or somebody we could communicate with a radio. There was really no communication going on, so we really didn't know. And there was a lot of patients too, so we had other things going on, so it wasn't a whole lot of time to kind of talk about things. We were moving from patient to patient, assessing people and doing all that stuff at the same time. But wow, I mean, that poor 13-year-old girl sitting on that bridge, his dad jumped off. A funny story. So funny story that his wife said was she was ready to call him because she heard about the bad accident. He called. She couldn't understand what he was saying because he was so upset or whatever. And so she called her daughter, and her daughter didn't break the ice. She didn't say, "Hi, Mom." She just said, "Dad jumped off the bridge." So then she was pretty distraught until she could figure out what's going on. But it was hard to most communicate with the other units, and it was one of those evolving scenes where we really didn't know exactly who was who, and until things started getting sorted out.
Yeah, Bob, I can imagine too, because just thinking back on some different calls, like you said, if you're working with natural resources police or Coast Guard or whomever, typically you have an ops channel or a patch that you can get a hold of them. But when you have just a Good Samaritan boater and you don't know what landing zone they're going to go into and what their capabilities and limitations are, because as well as I do, sometimes we've had those calls where a very well-intentioned boater will come in, but they don't know about the approach and doing a 360 and looking for other people in the water. So fortunately, everything worked out the way that it did. But I can't imagine, for that crew, especially that was the receiving crew. And I saw, Dip had put in that it was windy that day too. So you got the CHOP, you got the trauma patient who's been ejected, and they're coming in, no information. So I just think it's a testament to the folks that I was fortunate to work with, but you all are still currently working with, that just take the very minimal information and say, hey, look, we're gonna make the best out of this and do our job. So I can't tell you again how proud I am. When people call up, which I don't know why they're calling me, just because I used to work there, that doesn't give me any credit.
Well, you're still kind of a big deal up here, Trevor.
yeah. My name and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee, but no, but it was really cool when they're like, hey, and of course every now and then you get something in the other Ocean City, New Jersey, but I mean my phone was blowing up. I'm like, oh yeah, it's okay. And I wasn't being nonchalant about it, but it's just okay. We've had crazy calls and some nutty stuff going on, but nevertheless, it's just that goes to show just a level of professionalism and where you guys just take the job to say, okay, we're going to go with what we know and go with what we don't know and do the job. And fortunately in this case it worked out exceptionally well. And in those cases, and I don't know if you guys. I don't know if this is more after the fact, but as the incident occurred, but typically those incidents are not only multi-jurisdictional but multi-agency, where you're dealing with like I said, Coast Guard, MNRP, fire department, state police, sheriff's office, Ocean City PD. So how did the communications go and the operations go from a multi-agency standpoint?
So the Coast Guard got there relatively quickly, but this was happening so quick. The Good Samaritan actually got there first, and they actually did a really good job. They actually cleared the waterway. Them and I believe Natural Resources was down there also. They actually cleared the waterway. Unfortunately, we had a strong boat crew in town, but because we're cross-trained, they were right before this call went out. They were transporting a patient to Salisbury in the ambulance, and they weren't available. So we didn't have our crew in town at the time. It's kind of that's the struggles of staffing, but everyone kind of worked together. It was a little bit difficult in getting ambulances in there because they had to go up, and we tried to split the bridge in half, and have to have them turn around because the bridge is completely blocked. And so someone have to go east towards a coastal highway in town and go to hospitals that way, and the others have to come from the west. But the everybody was kind of there in place. We just needed transport units, and we're not staffed real heavy, especially this time of year. And so we had nine people were either out of town on a call or were on fire apparatus. So we lost like 9 of our shift that weren't able to transport people. So we had to rely on other ambulances to come in, volunteers and other departments and things. So a little bit slow for the ambulances coming in, but that's kind of expected because, like you said, we're a little bit remote where it takes a little bit of time for these guys to get in to the area.
Yeah, and something else I was thinking about too. One incident that I had been on some years ago, where we had people on the bridge in the water, so forth and so on, and we had some tide issues where we actually could not get a boat into our closest deep water harbor where we could actually land a boat wasn't in Ocean City. We'd have to go way far north or way far south just because of how filled in the bay is in that area. And they had to actually take our patients over to Ocean Pines, the municipality across the bay, and then fog set in where some of these folks weren't used to navigating with solely radar, and that was a challenge in itself. So, I think it goes a lot to say too about sometimes, like you said, we're all cross trained. We try to be the jack of all trades, and sometimes our boat crew is also our divers, and our divers are also our hazmat folks, and our hazmat folks are also our trench people, and you can only spread them so thin. And it's nice to have them, but if they're tied up on the handling for the first emergency, it is what it is. But working with those other agencies, it really comes into play. And even though I know up there we work on an island, it's always been important that we don't think like an island, because we need those extra resources coming in from those other places, no matter what time frame it is, because it's crucial. Like you said, I mean, if that Midtown bridge is blocked, then you got people coming in either to North Bridge or to South Bridge at the far ends of the city, or it's going to be quite a while. So how are things? And I'm not getting into like a operations discussion so much, but how has it been as far as trying to keep up any kind of, I don't want to say cross training, but making sure that we have that mutual aid relationships and training with the our time. Has that been really cut back because of COVID, or is that just something that's kind of waned, or is it still going strong?
We had some restrictions during the COVID time, but as all of our guys are pretty much vaccinated, and so we've those things have opened back up again. So mutual aid is strong. One thing that we're doing here now that we hadn't done much in the past, Trevor, is we're doing a firefighter 1 class. So we shared one with Salisbury, where they had 30 some people or something like that. So we split it, and we're doing it in town, which is kind of cool because with the exception of going to the burn buildings, we would do it all in town. So there are people from Berlin, there are people from Ocean Pines, there's people in this class, and I think so we're taking some good steps, I think, towards having better, I guess you call it interoperability, for lack of a better term. But I think it's everyone is affected with staffing issues. So I think that everyone recognizes the fact that we got to help each other out a little bit more, and I think that's across the nation in the fire service. I think for 99% of the fire service is running through the same thing. So we all end up working together. My local small town I live in here in Millville, Delaware, we rely heavily on our surrounding departments anymore, and us, and we just all kind of, to be honest with you, we all kind of work together a lot more than we used to. You remember back in the 80s, Trevor, nobody called anybody for anything. It wasn't going to happen. You took care of your own fires, and that was kind of it. I mean, even the large metropolitan areas, the Baltimores and stuff, are all working together with their neighboring agencies. So I guess, if there's any kind of silver lining in the staffing issues that we have, is that fire departments are learning to work together a little bit better.
And that's a good thing in itself. And Ben, I don't know how things are up there in Wycomico County, because you have Ocean City, Worcester County, and Sussex. You have the same thing, but with Wycomico County also. And to Bobby's point, not to try to date ourselves, but I remember when, if the fire truck was a different color, it couldn't come in town, and no matter what, which was just the epitome of ignorance at that time. And fortunately, we got past that. But at the same time, we always thought in straight lines, that if it wasn't up Route 1 or out Route 50 or out Route 90, we really didn't look at the capabilities and limitations of our neighbors to say, okay, what can they offer, and what can we offer also, because we have to help each other. And I look at that same dynamic where I am, is advanced as some things are a little bit retrograde in that respect also, like Bobby's talked about, where we're not going to call this department or that. And unfortunately, some of that still does exist nationwide, but it's very, very unfortunate, because when you have the opportunity to make a stop on a fire versus confining it to the zip code of origin, or you have the ability to do what's right for an MCI or a patient or anything else, but your pride gets in the way. And believe me, I think you should have tons of departmental pride, municipal pride, everything else, but part of that pride is making sure that you're serving the people in that community appropriately and getting them the resources, whether it's whether it's a yellow fire truck, a red fire truck, a green, whatever the case is. But because you're making those decisions, and your resources, and what the capabilities and limitations are out there, because you're going to get confronted with that call that you just can't handle. I don't care how big of a department you are, how well staffed you are, you're going to have limitations. You're going to have that day that, like you said, Bobby, all your special ops gurus are in the back of an ambulance transporting to a trauma center 32 miles away, and they're not on site. Their value's been lost because they're actually part of a unit. You don't have them in that glass case and you break them in case of emergency to bring them out. That's not how a lot of us operate. I mean, some departments are fortunate to be able to have that, but we don't. So with that being said, I think it's like you all are saying, it's really important to cultivate those relationships. But how from a Salisbury / Wycomico standpoint, Ben, how's mutual aid been with? Has there been anything that's kind of hobbled you guys with COVID, or are you guys kind of maintaining?
Yeah, I think we're definitely better than what we used to be. I think COVID kind of it kind of slowed the process of us like really branching out, both as the city of Salisbury and Wycomico County, the fire service. But I think there's been a lot of really eye-opening of like, holy cow, like everybody understands that the volunteer fire service is struggling for members, struggling to make calls, and it's not like I think we are understanding that it's not just, well, it'll be okay, we'll get out eventually. Like they're starting to understand. Like we're starting to see the importance of getting out quickly and providing that service quickly. we actually started. I don't want to say just started. It's been a little while now. A working fire dispatch that I know, and our deputy chief, Chief Darren Scott, worked on for a while, and had a little bit of pushback. But once it got through, I think it's been pretty well received around the county. So that way, our shift commander goes on scene, or I think the county stations that are using it now, that command unit goes on scene and they say, give me the working fire dispatch, that you automatically get an extra 2 engines and another truck. And that's on top of, we get an additional truck and an additional engine on any structure fire dispatch right off the bat. So we went from a 3-station response to a 4-station response on our structure fires, and now we incorporated this working fire dispatch. So we're automatically bringing more people into the city, and the more that you get to work with people, the more time that you spend together, the better off that you guys are, and you start to build that working relationship, and it opens those doors to have those conversations. They're like, oh, hey, you guys have this, we really need that. We have this, and working on figuring all that out to make sure that, everybody's getting the coverage and the services that they need and that their community needs. I know another thing that we're like really branching out on is our hazmat. So we've recently, in the past probably 6, 8, 10 months, ran a lot of hazmats to the west, so up into Dorchester and Caroline County. And their next due hazmat company that we have coming in is coming from Anne Arundel. So there's been a number of times that our hazmat crews are getting on scene, and shortly thereafter, or around the same time, Anne Arundel's arriving with their hazmat team and working with those guys. And that's been, let's talk about, your hazmat techs are in the back of a medic unit transporting to a specialty center, and now you have that call. So, I think that's something that we're really, as a whole in the fire service, like we're recognizing that everybody likes to go to fires, everybody likes to go to cut jobs, and if you call me, I'm going to call you, and it's no longer this is my sandbox, and that everybody like, hey, we need help, come help us, let's work together, let's make this right. I think Chris Rathel just posted something the other day about Ocean Pines, Berlin, Ocean City, all getting together at Cropper's Junkyard and doing like heavy machinery extrication. Like, that's great stuff, like getting those crews together. Cause again, you have a tractor trailer into another tractor trailer, or a dump truck or something like that. Like, it's not going to be one rescue. It's not going to be Ocean Pines. It's not going to be Salisbury. Like, you're going to need multiple rescue companies. You're going to need multiple stations. You're going to need a lot of manpower for that incident. So why not train like that? So I think that's something we're seeing like grow throughout the region.
And Ben, I agree with you. One of the things I just want to kind of throw in here a little bit is, a lot of times we might get our, knickers in a bunch because, oh, we don't want that other department beating us in, this, that, and it's a little bit of misplaced pride. I think you should have all the pride in the world, but what you do, instead of keeping those other folks out because they're serving a purpose, improve your own response time. You improve your own turnout time, figure out better ways to get there. I can tell you, we're a very oddball situation where I work. Is our firefighters' living quarters and their apparatus bay are not contiguous, and I'm working on that. Another story for another time, but it delays their response by up to 42, with no uncertain terms, from the middle of their day room to the apparatus bay. It's 118 steps. It takes 42 seconds by the time that they get out, and this is without rain or anything else. Get out, run across, hit the keypad to get in the apparatus bay, put the front door up, bunk out, get in the apparatus, and roll out. There's no reason in the world, and I'm trying to work that's something on my end that I'm trying to work out with my powers that be. But the point being is, that doesn't mean that we're going to keep everybody else out. Hey, if somebody beats us in, then that's fodder for me to say, well, you know what? My guys would have been there because they're getting their asses up and they're going as fast as they can, but there's certain barriers in their way that are beyond their control. And they are as fast as they can possibly be. And they work on that. I mean, they have a lot of pride in their response times, which is wonderful. But those are the types of things I think that we can work on individually. And like you said, Ben, too, is and this goes back a little bit to the old school of things where a lot of firefighters used to come from the trades. They used to be carpenters, welders, craftsmen, plumbers. And with that, you don't know who might be coming in on that next piece. I mean, we love to think that we have all the tools in our toolbox, but I look at Bobby McGee and say, okay, yeah, he's a smart guy. He's been around a while, but how many people know that he's very skilled at welding? He can do a lot of cutting. He knows a lot about metalwork. How many people know that? How many people would know that the senior man on my old shift was a lifelong carpenter, and all I had to do was show him a picture of a rake shore, and he could build 20 of them in minutes, which would take me a lot longer. So you might look at those skills too and say, not only just the mutual aid coming in, and not what's coming to you, but also who's coming to you. Start to learn those shifts. If you have congruent shifts that say, okay, A shift in county lines up with A shift in Ocean City, which I don't know if they do or how they do anymore, but you can start getting those resource lists together and say, hey man, today's a really good day. If we have something screwy, we have all this talent here, because people have a lot of off-duty talents that sometimes we just don't take good advantage of. But that's where a lot of the heavy rescue stuff came from. A lot of the squad stuff came from. A lot of the specialty truck stuff came from. We were doing stuff a few weeks ago, just engine company based, because we had people with skill sets, not because we were wonderful and that well equipped and that well staffed. We just had the right people at the right time that we're like, hey, let's tap into these resources. So, if you guys could just kind of chat about that just for a second, as far as looking at the individual resources, not only the collective, but the individual in your own department, and also on the opposite shifts, as well as maybe some of the mutual aid.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a good one though. It's a good thing to talk about, Travis. One of the things to think about is if New York City has 30,000 paramedics working, and I go visit New York City and I have that unfortunate heart attack, I'm only going to see 2. So when you talk about unit efficiency, sometimes they say it's always a weak link in the chain that breaks the chain. When you talk about efficiency, when you're talking about individual units, when you think about the 8-year-old in flannel pajamas, and you say, okay, well, it should take you a minute to put your gear on, but it takes you a minute and 30 seconds. Or let's go back even further than that. Let's go back to dispatch. It should take you a minute to process a call, and it takes you a couple minutes, So we lose a minute right there. And then how long does it take to process and dispatch the call? It should take 30 seconds to process and dispatch the call, but it takes a minute. So we lose 30 more seconds. And then we should be getting suited out in a minute, and it takes us a couple of minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or what. You can see that for somebody trapped in a building on fire or trapped in a car or whatever it may be, Trevor, you so eloquently say it, it's not our time. We're working on their time. That's literally, kind of where it is. I do a firefighter 1 class, and I'll tell them, you don't have to be the fastest person on the crew, but you can never be the slowest, because whoever's the slowest on the crew directly affects the victims. That's how people, individuals should think about it. And then units should think the same way. If you're getting beat in to calls on a regular basis, rethink how you have your gear laid out, how you have your response laid out, all those types of things, whatever it takes. But, I think that staffing doesn't fix unit inefficiencies. That's my personal opinion about it. You can have 16,000 people in your fire department, but if that first crew is not on their game, then the victim has to pay for that. And that's I think that's the gist you were getting at. That's what you're talking about, Trevor?
It is, Bobby, and I was going to say kind of preach on, but my thing is you got to get away from the rectal cranial inversion of things, because sometimes the tendency of management, and yes, I'll vilify them to some degree, is instead of fixing the root cause, they go after the immediate optic. And I'll give you a prime example, without getting into gory details. But several years ago, had we would run, obviously we run a lot of calls in multi-story, multi-family, multi-unit dwellings in Ocean City. And the ladder truck came up, obviously understaffed, and the person who was running the ladder truck needed to join the crew and go upstairs. Well, we had some issues going on, and the ladder couldn't be set like it needed to be set and this is why I want to kind of get in a little bit to between priority-based operations and SOP-driven operations. So instead of saying, wow, you know what, we really don't have enough people trained adequately to run this ladder truck that we need and that we've told the public that we need and that we told the mayor and city council that we need to run on these multi-story buildings, we said, well, you know what, we're not going to run ladder trucks anymore on multi-story buildings because we don't have the people to run them unless we really, really need it. Well, okay, stop, time out. You told this building owner that they needed to have this high-tech ass alarm system to have early detection departments so we can bring all the bells and whistles and get there as soon as possible to protect them. Is that correct? Oh, yeah. But now you're telling them that at that point, $750,000 ladder truck, we're not going to bring it unless we know it's on the running card, but we, the fire department, we can't fulfill our obligation. And part of it might be because of staffing, funding, budget, all that kind of happy horse crap. But the bottom line is, so instead of fighting the good fight and saying, hold on a minute, we promised that this truck would be there. It needs to be there. It's due to be there. There's rationale for it to be there. But instead of doing that, oh, no, let's put all our eggs in the basket over here. Well, hold on. That's a staffing issue. That's a training issue. That's a deployment issue. That's an SOP issue. So get off your happy ass. Don't worry about the paper cuts. Let's start looking at operations and putting it into play. And yes, sometimes, but at the same time, that's where you make some of the officials tell no. And when they say, oh, well, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. Maybe so. You tell me what service you want cut to the community. Which is it? You hired me as your subject matter expert to, whether I'm good or bad at my job. You hired me to tell you what needs to be done to protect this community the most efficiently and the most economically. You tell me what service you don't want to provide. I'm all ears, please. And that's kind of my problem with it is we have, and I'll get off my soapbox, but sometimes we have people in administration who will assume what their elected officials are going to tell them or what they're going to think. And sometimes they know what it's going to be. But instead of actually, having either having a pair of testicles or ovaries, depending on, which side of the fence you are on, they'll just automatically start cutting things. So you've got to look at the service that we're there to provide. If you're in a multi-story building, multi-family occupancy, and you have a ladder truck, and you think a ladder truck is a good thing to go on those types of buildings, especially when you have calls in them, and then you start taking away the ability for that truck to respond because of your own ineptitude or staffing issues, you can't sit there and pull back and say, oh, we just won't run a truck anymore. Well, damn, isn't that convenient? Well, you know what? I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't have enough firefighters and paramedics to respond to your heart attack today. So guess what? If the mailman gets there roughly around the time that your husband needs CPR, hopefully he took a American Red Cross class and can help you. That's the same mentality. So I'm going to get off my soapbox on that. But Bobby, that's where I agree with you on these types. Well, I agree with you quite often. But that's where I kind of look and say, we have to step up and look at the big picture and start putting the right processes into play. Guess what? Sometimes it's us. Sometimes we're dropping the ball. Sometimes we need to look at ways to make ourselves more efficient, ourselves better, and ourselves more proactive. So with that being said, I'm going to actually defer now to my emotional support beverage and let you guys talk for a moment.
Trevor, just to kind of go along with you, I posted Wade's comment. At the end of the day, it's all lies. We're our own enemy. So it's more than just the three of us that agree with you. There's a couple of us out there. So.
Yeah. So here's the thing about staffing, and I agree with you, Trevor. I know where you're coming from. So SEAL Team 6 took down the most dangerous terrorist ever known to the world, in my opinion. Their staffing was 15. So SEAL Team 6 took down a compound with over like 40 people in it, the world's most dangerous terrorist, and their staff. So we gotta. I mean, I delve into staffing, and I like everyone else talk about it some, but I've learned in teaching and instruction and things like that the amount of people is not as important as the quality of people. We do need more people, but we need to start off with a base of quality people to add people to, because if you've got 20 people that are operating at 60% of their abilities or 40% of their abilities, if you add 20 more people, I would argue it's going to make it worse. I think that's why we have instructional academies. That's why we have FDIC. That's why we have Firehouse Expo. That's why we have all these FDTN, all these different things out here to get the individual better, and then to get the team better, the crew better, to get the unit better, to get the station better, to get the fire department better, the first alarm response better. But I think that I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of times we use staffing as a crutch. Every time we don't do a good job, we go, well, you know what? It's just because we don't have enough people. And when we all know a really good engine company and one really good truck company can do a lot of good in a very quick amount of time. And so I think it's my sense of all this is that, we have to individually elevate ourselves if we want to make the team better. Because if you're riding on the coattails of other people, you're actually, in the whole scheme of things, you're dragging that team down. They're not pulling you along. You're adding dead weight to them. And I think everyone needs to think about that. And that being said, every single one of us is going to make mistakes. We're all human. And we're all going to have those calls where we don't do well. But the difference is, are you going to go back and tell yourself honestly, I didn't do well? I made these mistakes, and do you work on making a difference as far as the next time I run something like that, I won't make that same mistake again. I think that's the whole key to this whole thing is we're never going to have the staffing that we want. And the big secret out there with these large staff departments is not all of that staff is actively working on a scene. There's good guys, there's bad guys, there's good girls, there's bad girls, there's all that going on. And there are people that are going to step up in the fire service and kind of take care of business. But wouldn't it be great if we took those people in the middle and elevated them from 60% to 80% of their capabilities? That's how I kind of look at it, mostly because I do teaching. So in doing teaching doesn't affect staffing at all. But teaching is about individuals and how they work together as crews and stuff like that. So there's my soapbox, Trevor.
Well, no, and Bobby, you and I have had this conversation many times, and I agree with you. One of the things, and just like when we went through our different staffing changes before, what we had is what we had. And yes, we were going to try to fight to change and get our staffing and get but sometimes you got to figure out how to fight with the Army you have and not with the Army that you want. And yes, we're going to fight to get that Army that we want. And that's all well and good. But the reality is that's tomorrow, that's next month, that's next budget cycle, whatever the case is. What do we have today and what are we going to do with it? And credit, when we had 3-man crews, guess what? We worked on how are we going to best deploy a deuce to half in a high rise with 3 people? How are we going to best deploy a deuce to half in a high rise with less than that if we have less than that? What if somebody calls out sick? What if we don't? What if we're understaffed? And that's where, like, again, Bobby, your take was let's address this through training and fight with the Army that we have and let's do the maximum we possibly can and do it as safely as we can and as effectively as we can with what we have now, not with what we want later. And let's fight for what we want later, but let's get, we got to be on, we got to be that cognizant of what's going on. And, I'll fly that flag as long as I possibly can, is to say, yes, more staffing is always good, but when you have, and again, I'm not poking anybody in the eye, but sometimes you'll have a major incident, and this goes back to your comment about having 30,000 paramedics in a city and you only see 2. you might have a major incident and nobody's coming out of their office who is a qualified, on paper at least, a qualified firefighter, a qualified officer, this, that, or the other. Some will, and honestly, there's some that they have to do jobs. But when you have people who can fill different functions and different roles, who will stay in the administrative role and kind of, I don't want to say hide in that, but every now and then they will, and you'll have a working incident and you need all hands on deck. Well, guess what? If you're not confident in your skills, then that's about the time that you say, you know what, I'm no longer a firefighter, I'm an administrator. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, but embrace it. But don't hold that position out for somebody else, or use that to say, oh, well, we have X amount of administrative staff that are available to respond at any given time, so we don't need any more people on the street. That's great, but guess what? When that call comes out, your happy ass comes out of the office, you take off the shiny shoes and put on the doll shoes, and you go to work. So you can't have it both ways. If you're not willing to go out in the field and get dirty, don't count it both ways. And we do that a lot. I mean, just like I said before, if you have somebody who's a special operations person, usually they're multifaceted, and that's a wonderful thing, but you can only spread them so thin. So you've got to find that happy medium and that balance for the calls you're running versus the calls you may run, your special operations, your callbacks. So there's a balance in that, but we can't just look at things on a spreadsheet and say, oh, look at our staffing, this is wonderful. And sometimes you have to articulate that as well to your elected officials who control your budget, to say, okay, well, yes, I might have 20 people that on paper are firefighter paramedics, but let's break this down and be very honest with it. And that's where we got to be honest with ourselves. And Bobby, I think you and Ben had said that before. Sometimes we just have to do a gut check, and as much as we want to be all things to all people, we have to be honest about what our capabilities and limitations are within our own departments.
Yeah.
That was something I was going to talk about. Is we talk about don't be that slowest person. Like, you don't have to be the fastest, but don't be the slowest. If you're going to say that you're going to respond on calls as an administrative person, then respond on calls. Like a lot of the stuff in elevating. I'm sorry, the last thing we talked about was elevating yourself. From that 60 to 80%. Is that these people have to take a look internally. They have to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing and how can I be better? I can take all the classes in the world, but if at the end of the day I don't give a shit, then that doesn't do us any good. If I'm the one walking to the fire engine for the reported building fire, it doesn't matter what class I have, firefighter 4000, like it doesn't do us any good. You have to be motivated. You have to want to be there. You have to want to do the job, and you have to want to do it well for it to be effective. And if you don't, and if you can't understand that, if you're over it, if you're burnt out, that's fine. But then it's time to look for something else. You can't continue to say that you're going to provide a service and not provide that service to the best of your ability. And I'll be completely honest. When I left Ocean City the first time, I was struggling with myself, trying to maintain my credentials as an athletic trainer, maintain my credentials as a paramedic, and trying to keep current on, everything, the medications, the skills, everything that it takes to be a good paramedic. And it got to the point where it's like, if I go on this call, like I'm not going to kill him. I'm not going to let him die, but I'm not the provider that I would want showing up for me. I'm not the provider that I would want showing up for my family. So I stepped away, and when I came back, I'm honored to be able to come back to Ocean City and work there again. I said, look, guys, I need some field training time. Like, it's been 2 years since I rode a medic unit. The shift I worked with on Bobby's shift when we had that wreck, we had 5 calls. The first 3 or 4 were all priority calls. And I looked at my partner, and he was like, I don't want to work with you again. Like, we're done. So, but like, that's what I needed to get back into it, to start to do it again. So it takes taking classes, training, getting better, but you also have to want to do that. And if you don't have that, then don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you.
Right. I think it's not fair. I mean, I do think individually we need to elevate our game. But I also think from just our time teaching, and Trevor, you can chime in on this too. I think in my time teaching, and then also the big extensive study by the IAFF about crew sizes, I really do believe that if the politicians want the best bang for their buck, a 4-person engine is much more efficient than a 3-person engine, and a 5-person truck I think should be the minimum for trucks because of all the tasks and jobs that they have to do. And I think that I stand behind that. I think that if you're, and I run on 3-person crews, but I think if you're on a 3-person crew, there are certain things that can't get done. And I really think that I totally support that politicians and governments should start thinking about going back to that 4-person staffing. And Ben, you brought up a great point that we've had lots of conversations about. The fire service is slowly assimilated to an all hazards department, including EMS. And I think it's time to do some soul searching about whether or not having everybody cross-trained is the best way to handle this. I think it's not. I think that you have people that are EMS oriented that are trying to ride fire apparatus, maybe for better schedules or less calls. I think you have people on ambulances, their hearts in firefighting, and they're not giving their best game to their patients, and I think it's time for the fire service to go soul searching, and governments in general to go soul searching to say, maybe we need to split the service up a little bit and allow people to concentrate on being an engine guy, a truck girl, a paramedic, or an advanced care person, because I do think we're chasing too many rings. I think we're just going in too many different directions. And I know that I struggle. And the question is, do you want to have people that can do 20 different things okay? Or do you want to split those people up and have 20 people to do things really well? And I think we went through a long period of combining them together because of shrinking budgets and shrinking staffing and all those types of things. But I think it's time to rethink. Now we see the results of that. And I think, at least in my opinion, the results of that is maybe not always the best service to the citizens.
And Bobby, one of the things, and I want to be clear about this too, is we all say that you should be able to do the job. If you can't do the job, find something. That's a pretty easy statement to make, and we all kind of feel that way. And at the same time, I don't think that we do a good enough job of attrition planning. And here's what I mean by that: you might have somebody who served exceptionally well for 20, 22, 23 years, whatever the case is, and you might be in that kind of oddball size department that you're too big to be small, you're too small to be big. So I can't take this guy who served miraculously for this many years, but now he's got bad back, bad shoulders, bad knees, this, that, and the other. He's done his time, but now he's become a risk to himself and his crew and to the people that he's serving. But you want to see him through to retirement. And you don't want to throw this guy out with the baby out with the bathwater, because he's served. He's done, he or she has done a phenomenal job, and all the time. And sometimes I think that we're very willing to discard some of these people. And look, some of them they've coasted their entire career and they've not done a whole lot. Let's be very honest about that. But there's other people that were like, wow, I can't put you in inspection and prevention division for your last 18 months because I don't have an opening. I can't put you in, services division. I can't put you down at the maintenance shop because so what do we do with that person who has served admirably and put their time in, but has a little bit of time to go? So that's the other side of the spectrum. I mean, we have some of the people that, they might be a 25-year member and haven't done crap in 24. We know those people. We can name them. But we also have the other folks that have done a great job, but their mind and their body is wearing out. And we just kind of need to get them through. So that's where I think we need attrition and succession planning, and look to say, okay, when that happens, but also be equitable in the way that we do that, because we can't say, hey, Ben, you're my buddy. You've done a great job for 23 years. I'm going to hook you up. Bobby, you pissed me off 20 years ago and I haven't forgotten it yet. You've done a great job too, but I'm not going to try to help you out. So, we need to look for some roles and functions in our department. And believe me, there's enough stuff on a daily basis. I mean, even if you've got to, take from an operational to maybe a non-operational position, which is tough too, because that's another budgetary issue on the other side. But, let's look at some of those things also. So that, how do we retain some of the experience that's getting ready to walk out the door? Is there something that we can do to, cultivate that and extract as much of that as we can before we lose that person to retirement? But also, let's take care of the people who have served us and our communities well.
Yeah, I think the answer to that stuff, Trevor, is I think there was a reason why firefighters had 20-year retirements, and I think we had a bad economy, and I understand why things went the way they went. I understand why the beat counter said what they wanted, but what happens is I have like 4 years and 6 months left before I can retire. If it was a 20-year retirement, I'd already be able to end it. So by having those early retirements, we have to sell the value of 20-year retirements to the actual cities that are hiring these people, because not only if something happens to me and I get injured, okay, I got to try to make it to that finish line of 25 years, and some fire departments are 30 years, and I have to make it to that finish line to get my maximum benefit. Well, what you have to sell is that the 20-year retirement gives you an out. So that guy that has the bad shoulder, the guy that has the bad back can retire at a full retirement. I mean, because the bottom line is we max out at 15 years this year. So I'm maxed out. So if you give me a 20-year retirement, you're going to bring in a person at half my rate to kind of fill that back in. So there's an economic benefit even to the cities and counties and stuff to reduce those retirements, because this job can be very hard on your body and very hard on your back, your shoulder, your neck, everything else, even cardiac. We have lots of cardiac problems with a lot of our guys. So I think the answer to that, Trevor, is for us to look at, again, going back to a shorter retirement time to give you a window if you can't do it anymore. And then I think the other side of that is we'll bring people back that have retired part-time to fill holes. Why not bring back someone like you as a per diem instructor? So if you have somebody come out, instead of just filling holes with them that you can't fill with full-time people, bring them back with their talents without having to risk their backs and their shoulders all the time, and that's a low to no risk on the city or the counties or whoever, because you're just coming in as a per diem employee. You're basically a part-time employee. But I think those are great points, Trevor, and I think once again, we're seeing the results of extending these retirements out. We're leaving these retirements out for what the other employees do. Well, the other employees in the cities and towns they're great people, but working at a desk is not exactly going to blow your shoulder out or blow your back out. We're firefighting and even EMS. They're both, and police, I guess you could say for that matter, are pretty brutal on your body and can do a lot to you. So that's my thought about that.
Well, and Alan and Dip bring up some good points too, because and we've tried that to some degree to say, okay, well, look, let's take that person and pretty much assign them to the driver operator spot. Well, the way we train is that the driver operator of the engine should be one of the busiest people in the fire ground. They should be thrown into the bed. So we say one thing and then we try to compensate on another end. And like Dip's saying too, this is an economic thing where we have to work through to say, 20-year retirement, but it has to be palatable for the person to leave and not say, oh yeah, you can leave in 20 years, but you don't make crap when you leave and you can't sustain yourself. And now you're a greeter at Walmart for the next 15 years. So, it's a combination of things, but make it tangible. I know there are some departments in the U.S. who have done that. They've done a 20 and out, and they've made it very palatable to say, hey, look, we're going to make it worth your while to leave. You're not going to be a rich person, but you're not going to be, eating tuna fish underneath the bridge somewhere, to survive. We'll make this worth your while. So there is a balance point to that. I agree with these guys wholeheartedly, but something we have to kind of think about, especially from the middle to upper management end of things too, is how do we take care of some of these folks, and what do we push for to say, let's make sure that not only can this person get to retirement because they've served this city, this community, this town, whatever it is, well, but also you want them to be able to be functional and enjoy their retirement time. So those are some things too, to say, let's get you out in enough time where you can actually enjoy your retirement and go on to a second career, and not be hobbled up or handicapped because of the additional time that we've required you to stay on the job, abusing your mind and your body.
I just want to throw this in here that we talked about, those folks that are getting close to their retirement, or maybe someone has already retired and working on their second career, maybe at a desk job, and they're currently in a sling tonight. So maybe that desk job isn't as safe as what people say, but
hey, you know what? Just because I have a desk doesn't mean I work at my desk all the time. All right.
It's a pretty big paper.
Long Beach Shores Fire, safety third. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Here again, my emotional support beverage. You're wearing me out, Ben.
Hey, well, one, we're coming up on an hour. So, do you see this? Hang on a second. Gray hair competition. Bobby Wood.
Guy.
Holy crap. See, that's the difference. My shit's too proud to turn gray. It's going to fall out first.
But like I said, one, we're coming up on an hour, and two, one of the things that we've added to the Strike the Box page is a page for Hank. So if you don't know who Hank is one of the newest family members in the Steedman household. I don't know if you can spin that camera around. If Hank's out there, you can show him off.
Nah, I think he's laying inside right now.
I can't say I blame him. But go check out the website for Hank's page. He's also got an Instagram and Facebook page. It's Hank's Hugs and Love, I believe is what it's called. Bobby, are you getting the dog treat?
I call Hank my discount Dalmatian.
But go definitely check out Hank. He's a cool pup. Has lots of positivity. So check him out if you're having a down day. Check him out, and it'll help turn it around for you. So he's a cool thing going on. But with that said, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'd say, Bobby, give us your final thoughts, but you pieced out on us. So Trevor, you want to take it away?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Ben, if you could put out the silver alert in Sussex County there he is. He's back. Cancel silver alert. Cancel silver alert. Bobby's back. Now, thank you all for tuning in tonight. This has been a great kind of tailboard / kitchen table conversation. We have some great guests lined up, and again, it's like herding cats with everything going on. And some places COVID restrictions are lessening, and some places are increasing. But we don't want to give too much away, but we have some really, really great guests coming up. But it was nice to be able to catch up with you guys tonight and just kind of BS around the kitchen table, so to speak, and see some great friends and familiar faces on here. A couple things to keep in mind: just want everybody to try to be safe as we're coming hopefully out of this pandemic BS at long last. But also, we're getting into hurricane season, and I know that's just as much of a threat up there in the Mid-Atlantic. We've been through a lot of them together up there, brothers, and certainly down here. So, as the season rolls on, we have other things that we have to. So, stay safe, keep on doing what you're doing, and this is a great boost of energy for me when I get to sit down here and talk to you guys, and and again, see some of the folks that are tuning in tonight, and I know some other folks tune in later on. But it's just that shot of energy and redemption in the fire service that we kind of think like we want to do the right thing for the right reason, serve the communities that we're serving and to be the best we can in our respective industries. and check our egos and attitudes at the door, but keep each other accountable also. So, Ben, Bobby, thank you guys so much for being on tonight, and I'm going to go back to my emotional support beverage. Oh, and yes, hold on. For those of you who are asking, yes, I am in a sling. So it's pretty tragic. I'm kind of torn up about it. I had a stack of budget paperwork and it collapsed on my desk. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I did hurt my wrist and my shoulder, and it was not a collapse of budget paperwork on my desk, despite what Ben says. So Ben, love you, but kiss my butt.
CIP project. Bobby, you want to give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think about a year ago to today. I'm tired today. I've just had a crazy month of teaching firefighting. So from 4 acquired structure burns, 3 days at FDTN, doing a firefighter 1 class, and it's a beautiful tired. A year ago, we couldn't do any of that. So, you know what? They're lifting COVID restrictions all over the country. We've not been training like we should because of good reason, but it's time for us to go back out and pull some lines and throw some ladders. And so my big take-home points tonight are: I agree that I believe that we should have 4-person engines and 5-person trucks, and fire trucks should absolutely be red. So if you don't have red, there's a problem. So thanks, everybody.
Bobby, what are your thoughts on nose versus no-nose on your fire truck?
Nose versus no-nose?
Yeah, the conventional versus custom cabs.
You can't see from inside the building, Ben.
Good point. Can't see it from the medic unit either. So, wrapping it up, thanks, guys. Thanks for everybody for joining us. It was a great conversation going on in the comment section. So as you're watching, if you go back and watch it, kind of scroll through and see some of the comments that we had. They were, again, great comments for tonight's conversation. This will get posted tomorrow morning about 10 a.m. On all of our podcast websites or outlets or whatever you call it. I just kind of went blank. Like Trevor said, I'm not even drinking tonight. This is all natural. Sorry, guys. The
youngest guy who's got Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Where am I? Who are you? Like Trevor had said, stay safe. There's a lot of stuff that's changing. So just kind of take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your brothers and sisters. Like Bobby said, 4-person engines, 5-person ladder trucks, they should all be red. Get out and practice. Like he said, he's also been teaching a lot the last month or so, pulling hand lines, throwing ladders. What have you done recently? What have you done today? What have you done this past week to make yourself better? I had the pleasure of going down last night with Bobby as he was teaching his Fire 1 class. We brought a fire engine down for him to use for their class, and was helping one of our new driver operators that's in the process that did a phenomenal job, I thought. To go do something to help make yourself better. Don't be that last person. You don't have to be the first, but don't be the last. So cheers. Everybody take it easy. Have a great night, and we will see you soon.